Hi, this is Braden Holtby.
Hey, this is Tanner the Bulldozer Bozer.
Hi, this is Brian Burke from Toronto, Ontario.
This is Daryl Sutter.
Hello, everyone. I'm Carly Agro from Sportsnet Central.
This is Jay Onright.
This is Quick Dick coming to you from Tofnell, Saskatchewan.
Hey, everybody. My name is Theo Fleury.
This is Kelly Rudy.
This is Corey Cross.
This is Wade Redden.
This is Jordan Tutu.
My name is Jim Pattison.
Hey, it's Ron McLean, Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Hometown Hockey, and welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. Now, before we get to today's episode, today's cool one, today's Mr. Heath Rowe, which is his own sort of fan-fucking-tastic. Yeah, I'm fired up tonight. I tell you what, I'm fired up. Let's get to today's episode sponsors. First off, Carly Clausen, team over at Windsor Plywood, builders of the podcast studio table, which is looking exceptional tonight, if I may say so. For everything wood, these are the guys, whether we're talking about mantles, decks, windows, doors, or sheds. When you want quality, stop in and see the group at Windsor Plywood, or just hop on your phone, like I know you're doing right now. You're probably just fidgeting around, looking at some things, and take a look at their Instagram page or their Facebook page and see some of the quality products you can get from these guys. Don't hesitate. Give them a call, 780-875-9663. Clay Smiley and the team over at Prophet River. You know, I surround myself with some great people. Clay is one of them. I stopped in and saw the fine folks over at Prophet River there last week. And when it comes to guns, ammunition, hardware, whatever you want, just look them up, profitriver.ca. I promise they're going to answer all your questions. Like whether you're importing from the States or trying to find maybe that hard-to-find firearm, just give Clay a call, give the group a look, go to profitriver.ca today, anywhere across Canada. They're the major retailer of firearms, optics, and accessories, and they serve all of Canada. So check them out today, all right? Clinton team over at Trophy Gallery. They are downtown Lloydminster, Canada's supplier of glass and crystal hardware. Business owners, this is the perfect way to show your appreciation for your staff. Clint engraves these luxurious awards in store, and the variety is, shall we say, redonkulous. Take a look online at trophygallery.ca. They got all sizes, shapes, and price ranges. Contact Clint or Dean today, Trophy Gallery, downtown Lloydminster. That's trophygallery.ca. And if you use promo code Newman, 15% off. Just saying. Jen Gilbert and team for over 40 years, since 1976, the dedicated realtors of Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty, have served Lloydminster and surrounding area. They're passionate about our community, and they pride themselves on giving back through volunteer opportunities and partnerships as often as they can. They know home is truly where awesomeness happens. That's Coldwell Banker, Cityside Realty, for everything real estate, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 780-875-3343. And let's say you have a house. Maybe you need to look no further than a mortgage broker that can help, solidify, unmuddle, clear up all that confusing jargon when it comes to a mortgage. Look no further than Mrs. Jill Fisher. Now, obviously, her name says it all. She proudly serves the areas of Lloydminster, Bonnyville, Cold Lake, and Vermilion, and she's looking forward to working with all you fine folks for your mortgage needs. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, just take a look at what your mortgage is, and maybe it's coming up for renewal. Maybe you got lots of time on, but you should pay attention to where mortgage rates are at right now. All-time low, below 2%. Like, it is crazy low how low they are right now. But don't take my word for it. Give Jill Fisher a call today, 780-872-2914. She can help iron out anything. And maybe I tell you what, she can just figure it out for you, right? That's jfisher.ca. Talk to her. She's a hell of a lot smarter than this guy, all right? Finally, SNP Billboard. Shout out to Read and Write if you're doing any outdoor signage. Check out Read and Write. I suggest getting in contact with Miss Deanna Wandler. She is fantastic. She will make you look superb, just like the podcast. And if you're heading in any of these fine folks, I know COVID's got us all locked down and not really seen a whole lot of anyone. Make sure you tell them you heard about them from the podcast. I greatly appreciate that. And I know they enjoy hearing that you're listening and hearing and discussing. All right. Now let's get on to the T-Bar 1 Tale of the Tape. Originally from Fort St. John, British Columbia, you'll know him as the owner of Crudemaster Transport here in Lloydminster. With encouragement and maybe a kick in the ass from his wife, Tracy, in 2006 they started up the trucking company. He's a business owner, community member, and family man. He is one of the best who tells it like it is. I'm talking about Heath MacDonald. So buckle up. Here we go.
This is Heath MacDonald. Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast.
Welcome to the Sean Newman Podcast. Tonight's a special one. We poured a nice Glenfiddich, and I got Mr. Heathrow sitting across from me, Heath MacDonald. So first off, thanks for hopping in.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean.
I don't think it could have got colder outside, that's for damn sure.
You picked a gooder.
Well, I mean, now at least we're inside and it's warm, right?
Yeah, you betcha. Nice place, nice setup.
Now, Heath, can you pull that mic in just a smidge closer to you? You got a deep voice, but you gotta treat this thing kindly.
Yeah, alrighty. Well, a little homophobic.
Now, what I had envisioned for this is you're a guy who's made a name for himself in the trucking industry, and we can go back as far as you like. I'm always curious about the oil patch, the early days. By sounds of it, you got some amazing trucking stories from your time all over this place. And I just thought we might start a little bit. We don't have to go right back to day one, but, you know, you've seen some things over your career. Maybe we could start wherever you want to start, but back a little closer to the start than the end.
Okay. Well, I won't bore you. Try not to. I guess my career in trucking started in 1986, 85 when we were young, just, swamping on the odd truck, swamping on bed trucks and what have you, and jumped into the industry in 86. Went to work for a company in Grand Prairie. H.L. Powell was what the name of it was then. You'll see the trucks and trailers around now, Formula Powell. So that was two of the big boys that amalgamated later on in the 90s. A bit of a funny story to that. So I went to work on a mud truck. I was hauling drilling mud at that time. And it was busy. The oil patch was going to beat hell. And at that time, they were 100-pound bags of drilling mud that we hauled to the rigs. And for the most part, you could get loaded by a forklift in the yard, then you got the lease and you unloaded it by hand. You had a swamper with you, so the two of you would unload, and we made it kind of a race to see how fast you could get this mud unloaded and stacked, and made sure it looked decent when you left. And so a couple of years of that, it wears thin on you. You're literally thin. I was probably in the best shape of my life. And the company I was working for then, Powell, they decided they were going to start moving drilling rigs. And Pat, the owner, he come up to me and he says, you ever done that before? And I said, oh yeah, I've done that. I had never moved a drilling rig in my life. But if you missed the opportunity, that was an extra $4 an hour, right? And Tracy and I were married at that time with Megan, our firstborn. So I got to move this drilling rig. So I started pulling high boys and low boys then for the next year, and springtime coming. We always had a breakup up there in Grand Prairie. Like spring breakup lasted a strong 2 months. So we had a bit of ass time, so I asked Pat, I said, can I borrow the truck and trailer? Well, he said, what for? Well, I said, I got to go get my license. He looked at me, he says, you rotten bastard. And get out of here, then he said, go get it. So I drove the truck and trailer down to the licensing place. Lady, it was a lady, her dad was actually in the trucking industry. I knew her brother. She come out and she said, how'd you get here? I said, well, I drove here. She said, well, I hope you're not going to waste my time by doing this. So we had a quick run around the block and got my license and went to work. Pat, he brings that up every time I see him. So it's quite a story to that.
Never miss an opportunity, though.
No, you turn one down in those days. That's how it's changed. If you dropped the ball or you missed an opportunity or said no in those days, then somebody else was sitting in your truck. So jobs were scarce, and not everybody wanted to do what we were doing. So
What do you think about now, then, Heath?
well, it's a different world out there. Safety is a huge thing, which is good. It's come a long way from when we first started. The equipment we have now, compared to what we had, like it was insane. I worked up in the Arctic with a I believe it was about a 1966 Kenworth. Had a 318 Jimmy in it with a 5-4 transmission, and that's what you worked with up there. The trucks they have now, I don't know if you get somebody to drive something like that now anymore. We were heading up to a place called July Lake once, and that's north of Fort Nelson. It's in the Northwest Territories and BC border. And we had just a small load in the highboy in the back of the bed truck, and I was going up what they call the Sickany River Hill. And just to kind of relate the horsepower to you, so I was almost to the top, and 12 or 13-year-old kid passed me in the ditch on one of those old one-ski skidoos, had the two tracks and the one ski in the middle. Yeah, their top end was probably 25 mile an hour, and he beat me. So
You were not going anywhere too fast.
no, you didn't set any records.
I just had to look up Fort Nelson quick. I was thinking I knew where it was. I'm glad I looked it up because it's a lot further up than I remember.
Yeah, it's about, well, back then would have been 5.5 hours out of Fort St. John. So the highway's improved quite a bit since, but it's still not a great trip.
I can imagine the highways back then, though.
They weren't bad. They weren't as bad as when Dad was doing it. You hear Dad's stories, and even your dad's of, that highway was, pretty much freshly built, and what we knew as pavement now was gravel. And the pavement's a lot better, highway's a little wider, and they've cut out some of the hills and went around a couple of them, so it's a little easier trip than what they had to do, and a little easier trip than what we had to. So,
did you ever, or do you still talk to your old man about the old days?
Oh yeah, it's funny to sit down with Dad. He's got some great stories. You get thrown in jail for some of them, but there was really that was the original oil patch. That I think Dad.
How old would your dad be?
Oh, Dad was born in 1944.
Okay.
Yeah. So he went to Fort St. John, left Hillmond in his 20s, early 20s. I'm going to say, if not maybe 18, 19. And he went to work with my Uncle Ray up in Fort St. John. They had a trucking company in Fort St. John, MacDonald Brothers Transport. And he went to work up there. And kind of funny story, the company that I worked for, I just talked about to H.L. Powell. Well, Dad worked for his dad. And it was called Lake End Industries at that time, and then turned into H.L. Powell, which was Pat's dad, Hubert. So yeah, kind of followed in their shoes a little bit. But their trucking was way different than mine, and people that work for me now is way different than what we had. So
A constant improvement.
Oh, constant, yeah. The horsepower in these trucks now is crazy compared to what we had. And we thought we were in heaven if we had 400 horsepower. You were really uptown. And Dad remembers, he says, man, if we had 300, you were setting records. So it's changed.
What's the truck got now?
Well, you can still, like right now, you can get these new 600 Cummins, and most of them are 550s. Some of the young fellas like to take them in, get them tuned up and opened up, and it's my first winch truck that I bought had a 4 1/4 and a 4 1/4 cat, and that was a good size engine. That was good. It was a good engine, probably Caterpillar's strongest engine. And then, of course, the Cummins come out with a 460, and then Cat with the 475s. And Cummins and Caterpillar back in Dad's days and my start days had the big engines, the 600K line Cummins, and then Caterpillar had the V8, the 3408 Cat. But right now, it's more torque than horsepower. So you have the horsepower, you have the torque, and you have, well, it's quite a bit better fuel efficiency, I guess you'd say. The emissions right now and the shit they put on these trucks right now makes it tough to go up to the Arctic where we worked. Just the trucks don't run right up there. You know, when we were up there, cell phones didn't exist. There was 8 of us up in that one camp, and 2 out of the 8 trucks had XJ mobiles in, so you could, if you got into a bind, you could find a tower and phone out. But other than that, you had CBs and 2-way radios and no cell phones. So when you broke down, you had to figure out a way to get home. So you had to be a little bit mechanical. These trucks nowadays, the only thing you need in your toolbox is your cell phone, because you can't do anything. So that's a huge change.
I was curious when you get in a bind, I'm curious what a 1980s bind looks like. Because today, you're right, you break down on the highway, you ain't stepping out of the truck. You make a phone call and...
Yeah. Well, you did what, I guess you did what you had to. You did what you learned. Like when we learned, the big difference between now and then, today you can go, pay your X amount of dollars, I don't know how much it is, and you come out with your Class 1 with absolutely zero hands-on experience, to where when we started, you sat in the jump seat for a year, maybe 2, and that's how you learned. So you learned from your mentors what to do when something broke and how to bypass something to get home. Whereas now that hands-on experience just isn't there. I blame the government. They've turned our industry into a mockery, to say the least.
How young were you when you first started driving a semi? And I really don't mean, I was trying to think of this. I know Dad and I was probably like 13, 14.
Yeah. Well, Dad let me drive when, as long as he was there, then kind of showed you a little bit. You got the feel of it. You were totally addicted to him. I was, You couldn't wait. That was the only thing on your mind, was to drive a truck. That was no other industry, no other job, nothing else mattered in the world until you could drive your own truck. And I look back at that sometimes and go, geez, the hell were you thinking? But it's been good to us. I'm glad none of my kids got into it. They went different routes, because trucking's a good career, but it's not a great family career. Keeps you away. At least it did then. Now with a lot of the new rules and the safety, scheduling's there where we didn't have a schedule. When we were doing it, your schedule was freeze up till spring breakup. Days off and schedules didn't exist. Excuse me. They're way different.
Well, I grew up when Dad was hauling across all of Canada. He'd be gone for probably, and Dad remembers probably better than I do, it felt like 27 to 30 days. But I know for sure when he started working for Sandpiper in town, I actually had a EDAM at the start, he was working 27 to 30 days, and they weren't 12-hour days, but, they were like 18-hour days.
Well, you worked until the job was done, basically. Like, there was no... I was trying to remember the year that they started to enforce logbooks. I think it was about 1995 that the government started to enforce pre-trips and logbooks. So your hours of service came into play, and at that time, when they came in, we were allowed to work 15 hours a day every day, legally. 365 days a year, there was no
Yeah,
limit.
they slowly just keep pulling.
They keep pulling back from it. Now, I think, now as long as you're still provincially regulated, they've taken an hour off you, so 14, but you can still work pretty much every day. Federally, being you're crossing borders, you have a set schedule to follow, and I believe it's 70 hours in 8 days.
So do you, as a guy who's made his living in that industry, is that part good or no?
I think it's good. I think it's. I don't think I enjoyed it when we were younger, and I enjoyed you just worked. That was what you did. But looking back, I pretty much watched my kids grow up in shifts. Meaning you'd come home, you'd have a couple of days, and then you'd be gone again for 30, 40, 50 days. First year we moved to Lloydminster. Tracy, my wife, hardly knew anybody here, and I more or less unloaded her and the kids, and then jumped in the truck and went to Zama Lake for the winter. Left her in a strange community with 3 kids and a young son that wanted to play hockey, and she had no idea how to dress him. So we done that over in XJ Mobile. I guided her through how to put his hockey equipment on. He was just about done the season before I watched him skate. So that's the kind of stuff you missed back then. So the industry being the way it is now, I think it's better. You can almost be a family man and be in the industry.
Was there nothing else to just knowing how much you care for your family, and I'm sure you would have rather been at home and around Tres Colbs to go play some hockey. Was there no other options back then?
There was, but none that we could afford. Tracy and I were married young, and we had a family young, so that comes with its benefits as you get older, but when you're younger, you got to work. The bills need to get paid. There was nothing really out there that paid like the oil patch. It was big money.
There's still nothing like the oil patch.
No, there isn't. No, it's good money, and you have to work hard for it. But it's pays the bills. Pays the bills quicker. I couldn't afford, and I'm not blaming anybody, or it's just the way life dealt its hand to us. An apprenticeship program somewhere, or starting in a smaller business out of the oil patch, doing a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Just there wasn't enough cash there. You needed to work up north. You needed to get up there to make the money. And back then we were doing well. There was $10,000, $11,000 months in the early 90s, in 1990, 91, and that was wages only. And we weren't paying a lot of income tax then either. So I don't think we kept any more than we did now. But yeah. But it was good. I enjoyed it. The memories are great. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it's definitely an experience, and I don't know how much of that they're even doing anymore. Where we worked, anyway.
You mentioned, I kind of cut you off when you talked about the government and the oil patch. I don't know if I want to get you wound up. I kind of want to get you wound up tonight, but it's a strange, Dad was telling me, did you hear about Regina?
Not yet, no.
Dad was telling me that Regina, the city of Regina, has removed oil and gas from sponsoring anything. Says they want to distance themselves from it.
Really? Wow. Well, I believe that if you're going to stand behind a cause that you think is right, stand behind it. Absolutely. But stand behind it. So shut your natural gas off to your house. See if your vehicle will run on unicorn piss. And get a wood-burning stove and stand behind it. That's a protest. If you want to bury our industry and enjoy the luxuries of our industry, you're not standing for much. This industry, Canada is the highest regulated country in the world when it comes to the oil and gas industry. And this carbon tax that's been imposed on us right now, Canada should be getting the credit from every country in the world because we are a carbon sponge with our wetlands and forest. And yet, our government wants to turn us into the villains. We went to BC this summer rather, Dad and I, and my sons and Dad's grandsons and nephews, and salmon fishing. We were in Victoria, where oil and gas is taboo. And I didn't see one electric vehicle. And I'm fairly sure these big ferries that were going back and forth to the mainland they weren't rowing them. They're all diesel powered. So, yeah, if you're going to stand behind something, like I say, stand behind it, but do it with some dignity and actually support what you're backing down.
Does it have anything to do, and this is just my young mind looking at it, does it have anything to do with where the population sits? 81.4% of Canadians live in cities, and like, is that where this disconnect is coming from?
I don't know I don't know where the disconnect started. Because most of our bigger cities, all of our bigger cities are run, their heating sources are natural gas based. The vehicles they're driving, lots of them say, well, we take the transit. Well, maybe you can afford that luxury. Us guys like yourself and myself and smaller communities in rural areas, there's no transit system in our areas. So I'm sure people they carpool as they can because of the price of the gas, but like really, their world doesn't make sense to me. I don't know how they justify what they're boycotting. I really don't. They can't break down. In California, for instance, they're promoting all these electric Tesla vehicles. Well, that's great, but there's not a part on that vehicle that's not petroleum based. So the batteries that are powering that vehicle, if you've got no petroleum industry, what's going to build the battery? They don't think of that. Nobody said the tires on the ground. They're not chiseled out of rock. So, and this is where our government falls down. This is where we're not hearing the full story. We're not hearing the right end of the news. What we're hearing is, I guess, what the media and our government want us to hear, so they're promoting a false product. Our world needs regulations for the climate. Absolutely, I agree. The old days of dumping oil into a ditch and having an oil spill or letting diesel fuel run down the side of the highway, those days are gone, and I think Canada leads the industry when it comes to the environment. And I believe that you need to enforce that. But you also need to support the largest driving force in our country, which is, like it or not, the oil industry, in my opinion.
Well, I think you're right. Oh. Yeah. I always bring back the population thing because it always staggers me to this day that 81.4% of people in Canada live in a city, and let's just go something. I'm a farm kid, right? Grew up a farm kid, but as far as when slaughtering beef and stuff like that goes, Never done it. Never seen it. So I'm removed from it already. And my kids will be removed from it again. And as time marches on, that's where it goes. Like the 100% non-beef, what the hell do they call that? Beyond Meat. I don't get it. I really don't get it. But what I do get is what the media sells them, right? They see a cow being slaughtered. Yeah, is that great? Well, no. We're this giant population. How would you like to get your meat? Like, it just doesn't come magically in the store, prepackaged and sitting there, right? Like, and for anyone to think that, I just don't think they've actually thought through the full process. And when it comes to oil and gas, you look at how media works and how social media really works and feeding people what they want to see. Man, it doesn't surprise me because I see it on both sides where people get hooked up or stuck up on their things and then they get fed more of it, and there they are. But us sitting here in this industry, you spending your life working in the industry, know exactly how important it is to not only like building things, but Canada's economy is like, we're attacking all the things that make our economy up, which is oil and gas, which is agriculture, which is lumber, which is all these amazing things. And we do live in a country, thankfully, that is conscious of like what we're doing to the environment and what we're doing to people in different places, and we're trying to make things better. But in the meantime, I don't know. I struggle with what's going on.
I believe the media and the social media is poisoning a lot of things we should be thinking about. Commercial that gets me on TV, and it just drives me nuts every time I see it. I want to turn it off. I won't name the name, but I'm sure everybody that's listening will know which one I'm talking about. When they start interviewing a couple of ranchers that have grass-fed beef. Well, I'm 52 years old, and I don't know what the hell else we fed them as long as I've been on the ground, but I'm pretty sure it was grass. A cow eats grass. That's grass-fed. They're not serving you a product that's any different than any other product.
But what they've seen, Heath, is they've seen what's happening in the States, probably closer to bigger centers in Canada, for all I know.
I'm pretty sure the cows eat grass there too.
Well, they might, but they also get fed a lot of grain. They also get probably less. What they're going on is they have less room to move, more people to feed. So what the industry has done is found a way to feed a giant population and keep them fed. Listen, I just had, I was saying before we started, I had Vernon Marlatt in here. Guy's 98. I asked him, what do you remember about the 20s? I don't remember what money was. He said, what do you mean you don't remember what money was? He goes, well, probably for, I don't know, he couldn't figure out the years, but, let's call it the first 5 to 10 years of his life, the way they got groceries in town was by making butter and cream. That's in one man's lifetime. And here we sit.
Yeah.
And the bleeding hearts, as everybody likes to call them. But heck, I don't like, does anyone like seeing a cow being slaughtered? No. But at the same time, you have to understand, if they aren't doing it, then you got to get out there and be self-sustaining. Because what they did through the 30s and probably the 20s and probably before that is they were on these little farms. Everybody had these little farms. And they did all that. And if you talk to most of them, actually, I shouldn't say all of them, but a lot of them said one of the things they didn't have a problem with back then was food. They were always well fed. Why? Because they were self-sustaining that way. They didn't have money to do anything. Half of them turned their vehicles because they couldn't afford gasoline into something the horses pulled.
Exactly. And really, if you don't want to eat it, don't. I don't have a problem with it. It's.
The funny thing is can't you see they're going to have some health problem in like 15, 20 years because everybody went to Beyond Meat and wait. It isn't that healthy and nutritious and everything else. Like I'm just looking at it and go like, this is batshit crazy.
It is, as far as I'm concerned. It's just a guess, but I don't think the caveman evolved from turnips. I think it was beef, or meat of some sort. You don't have to like it, but don't try and crush an industry because you don't agree with it.
Well, the thing is, I don't think people fully understand if they crush oil and gas, what's going to happen to the rest of Canada, let alone Alberta.
That I feel is the fault of the media and social media by not giving all of the information. You want to buy an electric vehicle like I taught you before. Go ahead and buy one. Understand what that vehicle is made of. Understand what powers that vehicle and how it's made. You cannot, in California, for instance, all those windmills you see down there, and they think they're doing great guns. California, Los Angeles is probably the filthiest city in the United States. There's a layer of smog that lays over that city like you've never seen. And if you don't believe it, go there and look at it. The windmills you see there, they're probably only 20% in production because the bearings in the windmills can't handle the sand from the desert. And they can't afford to fix them. When they break down, when the bearings are shot, they lay there dormant. So wind power is good in its place. But then they don't want to do dams. Now, Fort St. John, that Site C dam, they boycotted that. They raised hell about that. But so there's another source of power, but they don't want that either. Destroying the coal mining industry. No, can't do that. They don't want coal. Well, what the hell are you going to do? You know, they want an electric car, but they want to boycott every other way to make power. Well, yeah, makes zero sense. But the media is not telling the whole story. If they were, would people listen? I don't know. But there's got to be some logic.
You've seen in your, how old are you now, Heath?
52.
52. In your 52 years, you've seen a lot of recessions.
Yes.
Are the 80s anything like this?
No. So my wife and I went through the first one in the 80s. We were first married. We were just married, and we raised a family on roughly 13 hours a week. So you grabbed whatever work you could then, and you did it. It was at 3 a.m. or whenever you just went and done it. And you weren't fussy about what you did. Seen the next one in the 90s, right when we moved here. 1997, oil bottomed out. Another one in 04, very small one. Minor one in 08. And when this one hit in 14, I'm sure people wrote down what I told them. That this was, I never thought. I undershot this one so bad. I said this one's going to be about a year and a half, and we'll be back at it. I would have never predicted this. This is the worst one I ever seen. This one is second only to Mr. Trudeau's father's reign when the interest rates went through the roof in the early 80s. When Pierre Elliott drove that interest rate into the high 18s and 20%, mortgages went through the roof. So if that would have happened now with what we're going through today, we'd have been up shit creek. This is by far the worst one I've ever seen. And sadly, when you think you get just a slight breath, something else shows up and they drag you back under the water. It's terrible. This COVID thing is the biggest politically driven farce I've ever seen in my life. Sadly. Well, my wife and I come back from the States. We're on our 14-day quarantine, so you get a lot of time to think on how the world is thinking and how this should be attacked. I believe that this flu, call it COVID, it is bad, and the vulnerable should be protected and should have been protected. The elderly, the ones with the lung conditions. I think politically it was handled terribly. They've pretty much flanked the whole country, and the fear mongering that has gone on between in the social media and the media itself is insane. Dying's one thing. We're all going to do it at some point in time, and nobody wants to. The fear of dying right now is sadly overpowered by this disease and people not thinking the fear of not being able to live is where I'm at. And right now we're not being allowed to live. And that is scary.
Well, I talked to you a while back about Christmas was an interesting time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I kept telling people, listen, they shut down the ranks, don't worry. Like, they're talking about the ponds being shut down, don't worry. And then, you hear about the guy being hauled off at Calgary, the young junior guy. I think his name was Ocean.
Yes.
Of course it was. And you know, I at the time it shocked me because I was like, I never thought I would get that close to home, right? Like when it's off in even my wife's hometown, Minneapolis, right? They had all the riots and everything's going on. It's far enough away that you're kind of like, it isn't going to get this close. Then when the cops did what they did in Calgary, I mean, obviously you can see like all he had to do was get off the ice and walk away and it wasn't a big deal. But then the other side of that argument is like he's skating outdoors on a rink. I don't know. Like, that seems pretty, like, illogical to bring in the SWAT team to bring him down.
I thought it was terrible. I think that could have been handled numerous different ways. I think, you know what, people are so frustrated right now with some of the rules that are being rolled out, and even the new ones that our Prime Minister just rolled out here for traveling to the U.S. and other international countries. I think it's, I don't agree with it, but...
Well, what was his exact words on that one?
Well, he's like a politician is, you're not going to get an exact wording on it. You got to kind of wait and see what happens. Right now, the fear is that he's going to close the border to even his own countrymen, so he won't allow us back in if we leave. You know, and really nothing surprises me anymore. He very likely could. Back to that young fella on the skating rink, you know, people are losing respect and confidence in the people that are put their lives on the line every day to protect us, but they're also following a different set of guidelines than we as average citizens do. I think they have a job to do, and they're doing what they're told. It's their sworn duty, but at some point in time, they're going to start to question what they're being told to do. And I think people with common knowledge, common sense, we're all kind of in that boat right now. We're wondering, we're doing the math. You know, you've got a 97, 98% recovery rate. It's bad? Yes, it's bad. But have they gone to an extreme right now? I believe they have. The rules that they've set in place, so you can walk into a restaurant, but you have to have a mask on. So you walk into the restaurant, sit down, take your mask off. Gone from 6 people down to 4 you can sit with. So what's your gain? Prove to me that these masks are working. If they're working, why are the infections going up? If the masks actually work. I don't believe they work. And I've talked to doctors that say they don't work. So who's steering the team right now?
Well, I'll say this. I'm not a doctor. I will say this, though. Our leadership is lacking. And when you have that, you question everything they do. And they've been doing that since day one. That goes all the way to the top. That goes to Trudeau. That comes all the way back through everybody we got. Because anytime I had January 15th penciled, Heath. I think I said that to you over last time we talked. I really thought, you know what, over Christmas they're not going to open it up, and I was like, you know, whatever. You're gonna play the game of we got too many. We're gonna shut it down because you don't want the entire country interacting, whatever. But I thought January 15th you'd start to see them open it back up. Hockey would be coming back. Kids would get to go play. Blah blah blah. And here we sit. And, you talk about restaurants. I mean, that's Saskatchewan thing. You hear the stories like the Vermilions, the Wainwrights, the Cold Lakes, all their restaurants, no in dining. Like Alberta's locked down. They aren't allowing anything. It's only takeout. That's it.
I think when the smoke clears on this eventually, and I hope to God it does soon, there's going to be some good things come out of it. There's some of the stuff I'm seeing out there that I like, and then lots of people I talk to like the, getting your temperature tested before you go into a mall or into Walmart or into Superstore. I think that's great. If you've got a fever, and you shouldn't be allowed in there, period. I think that's going to be something that's good, and that should be carried on after this is all done. As far as washing your hands and all this stuff, that's getting old. We were told, we were brought up, wash your hands. So this isn't nothing new to us.
I think we're just paying more attention to it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's probably, well, let's assume that it is worse than the common flu. Mm-hmm. Right?
I agree.
Killing lots of people, not good. But everything else after that, with all the numbers and how much focus we put on it, is all we're doing is just looking at the flu and because it's not like they're saying this is I don't know. I keep coming back to this. People think I'm dumb for saying this, but I'm reading Big Bear's book, right? Big Bear is around in the 1800s. North Battleford, Paradise Hill, Lloydminster, that circle, right? If you were to put a triangle between the three. And he talks about coming across smallpox and it wiping out like entire camps. And they were there the day before. And you understand, like, I go back to, and maybe I'm wrong on this. Maybe modern medicine has made us all feel a little too comfortable. But the way I look at it is if it was really bad, you wouldn't have to tell us jack shit. I wouldn't be sitting in here. You wouldn't be sitting here. We would be in our spots. Everybody would be finding some way to get groceries delivered. You'd be hand sanitizing the groceries because you'd be worried about everything. Heck, at this point, we're pretty much bathing in hand sanitizer, which is going to come with its own set of problems down the road.
Yeah, I don't think it's. I think it's bad. Is it as bad as they're telling us? I don't believe so. But like you said, and I agree, and I'll say the same. We're not doctors, so we have to rely on those professionals. Hopefully, they're feeding us the right information. But there's a set number of doctors and nurses out there that are
saying
the opposite. So, I guess what side of the fence are you on? I'm looking at what's going on out there with our economy, with our elderly. I've got a grandmother in Fort St. John right now, and my mom hasn't been allowed to see her in over a year. That is sad. And if this virus was that bad, why are the nurses allowed to go home to their families every day and go back in to see my grandmother? And yet my mom, with a positive test, offers to quarantine for 14 days to go and see her, and that's not allowed? That makes zero sense. So if you're going to make a rule, it better make sense. A lot of these out there don't, in my opinion.
Let's talk about something. I think a lot of people in this area, for those who've been listening to the podcast and don't know you, Heath, or maybe just know you as Crudemaster, the guy who does Final Five. Dad and I were talking about this the other day, and I was explaining that I've heard it a couple of times when I've had a couple of late night sarsaparillas with you. But when did you decide that, you know what, let's start a trucking company? You and Tracy decided, like, we got to do something here, and we got to change something. Like, how does that come about?
Well, that would have been about 2004. I was working for a company in Lloyd here, and things just weren't going the way I thought the way I wanted them to go. I was a supervisor for one of the local companies, and I'd been talking to the people that I was dealing with, and it was actually not my idea at all to start a trucking company. My wife was up my ass for about 6 months saying, we got to do this. So it's her idea. She takes the credit.
That's it. We're stopping the episode right now. I'm going to go get Tracy and be done with it.
Yeah. But no, she was the push and the the push and pull behind the move, like to start Crudemaster. That was her. Dad and I, in early 2005, went salmon fishing to Prince Rupert, and we talked about it. We drove down to Rupert from here. We met some guys there, so 17-hour drive down, 17 home, and I'd run this idea by him, like this might work. And we done the math all the way home, all the way back, and so in 2005, September of 2005, we incorporated Crudemaster. I borrowed $275,000 off Dad to start. I love you, Dad, but you're probably the most expensive banker I ever had in my life. But that got us going. And we hauled our first load of fluid February 24th of 2006. So we bid, essentially, the one company I approached before we started the company was, I want to bid on this work. They said, well, if you don't have the equipment, you can't bid. I said, well, how do I bid on a job I don't know I'm going to get and have all the equipment? And he said, well, that's not our fault. You put your bid in and you prove you have the equipment. So we went and bought 26 trailers at that time and bid on the work. And waited. Like, oh my God. I'm pretty sure the shares of Ron Bacardi went up substantially when I was waiting for this one. But yeah, we were awarded the bid on the 1st of February to take over March 1st. And the company that was hauling it, when they got the news that they weren't going to be hauling it, of course, pulled out. And we went to work. So yeah, we started out with 26 trailers at that time. We had 20 leased operators on the road and 6 spare trailers.
What was the MacDonald's household spending that much money and having no idea if you're going to work? Because what happens if you don't get that?
Well, we were in the trailer sales business, apparently.
Yeah.
That would have been it, yeah. It was a gamble.
When you read books and they talk about, in business you got to take risks, that's a pretty big old risk right there.
My dad's probably the biggest gambler I've ever met. He's taking chances. He's a lucky man. And he said we could pull it off. And Tracy said there's absolutely no way it won't work. And yeah, it was sketchy. Like there was a lot of sleepless nights, but we made it work.
And what did your dad say? Your dad's just like, yep, here's the money. I think this is going to work.
Oh, no. Not quite with Dad. He was as nervous as anybody. That's a lot of money back then. Dad, Dad's life wasn't roses, so the money he had, he worked hard for, and so it was quite a pull for him. But hindsight, yeah, gods were shining on us, I guess, and we pulled her off. We ended up losing the work. We bought about another 10 trailers a year down the road, and the work went up for bid, and we lost it. So we were a year and a half into a contract and didn't have anything. So that's when it got real sticky. But scratched around and picked up the odd job here and there until everything kind of came back. But it was a struggle. Sleepless nights. I'd have probably thrown the towel in, but Tracy said, no goddamn way, we're not. So we went. We've been talking to some other junior oil companies, and we ended up getting their work, and it just the way it worked, they were small companies that ended up growing substantially in months. We went to work for one outfit. It was we started there with 2 tractors, and in 16 months' time, we had just about 38 units working for that company. So that's why you never turn down the 1 truck job, because that could be the 100 truck job. So that, what's I say, good luck.
And you just never know when a door closes and another one opens. You just don't know what you're walking into.
Yeah, and that was in '08. That's when oil really took a run. I think what did it get up to? 130 some a barrel. We bought our first company truck then, because we couldn't hire subcontractors fast enough. The production was coming on so hard, you just couldn't get the right people in there trained up in time to do it. So I jumped in the company truck and went to work until we had subcontractors to sub in and keep the company going. So.
From working with Dad and Jay and Harley, I have to assume you have seen some absolute characters come through Crudemaster.
Oh, God. Yes, we have, yeah. There has been some dandies. We've had, all in all, in the time we've been in business, we've had some great people, and still have. We've got some of my original subcontractors still with us. But yeah, we've had, about the time you say, well, I've seen it all. You haven't. You haven't come close. And you have to just back away and go someplace and laugh. It just amazes you. Some of the shit people will try to pull off is, you wouldn't believe it if I told you.
Now, are you at liberty to at least tell one of those stories?
No, I'm not going to dip into that. Yeah, I'll tell you one, actually. So we had a guy unloading at a battery over by Elk Point. And we were pit dumping then, which is, in my eyes, should have been outlawed, but it's gradually getting that way. There's very few that still do it. But anyway, it was messy and gross. And so where they were unloading this oil at was right up on top of a hill. They built it up, and then the trucks drove up the hill and dumped into the pit, and then the pit gravity fed to the tanks. So I got a phone call, and so-and-so, he got to get to the battery because he's hit the pipeline. Well, so I drove out there. I looked at the truck, and went up to it, and I said, what happened? He said, I started unloading, and then the maxi brakes just come off. I said to him, I said, your brakes just don't come off on these trucks. Nope. Looked dead serious. No, maxi brakes just release themselves. It don't happen. It can't happen. I was so angry I fired him right there. And I thought about hiring him back a week later just so I could fire him all over again. I was so mad. Because to think that you're that stupid, to think that a maxi will just, anybody that's in the industry knows that it just doesn't happen. And he stuck to his story right to the bitter end. Yep. So what he'd done is he'd pulled his trailer brake on instead of pulling his maxi brakes. Jumped up in the pit, pulled his trailer brake, jumped out, opened the pit valve, and the trailer brake released, as they will gradually, and he rolled off down into the pipeline. Thank God it was his insurance and not ours. What a mess. That's one minor one.
How much has things changed over the generations? You mentioned working with your dad. Now you have Tracy making sure you make great decisions. And now you got your kids working with you.
Yeah, actually. Well, I always liked working with Dad. Dad was there was there's two ways with Dad. There was Dad's way and the way you weren't never going to do it, and that was so you got used to that. And he's pretty wise when it come to business, and knew a lot about trucking. When we moved down here, I was working for my dad. And Dad actually designed and patented that arm on those tank trailers that your dad uses.
Really?
Yeah.
Your dad did?
Yes. Yeah. He patented that arm. So I actually was down here when I first come down here. He was getting the first trailer with that arm put on it, so I pulled that for him when we were down here. And so yeah, he's a pretty knowledgeable fella. But it was his way. Now, with my kids and my wife, with all of us working together, I guess it's their way. I just listen. I'm still a pretty good listener. No, just kidding. No, it's great having.
I'm kidding, Tracy.
Yeah.
I love you.
The nice part about having your family working with you is you always have that element of trust. I can leave that office and know everything's handled, or Tracy and I can leave and know that everything's being handled. We don't have to worry about anybody trying to get ahead of you, stealing money. You know, it makes for a very comfortable atmosphere for us. And it's good. We leave our work at work and home is home. You have to, I believe, to be able to survive. Work stays at work. Sometimes it doesn't, but that's for the most part.
What has been maybe, we've mentioned some of the tough times of Crudemaster, some of the low days. What is some of the best memories so far of Crudemaster?
That's a good question. Well, there's been some good years. 2012, exceptionally well. We've got to do a lot of things. We stretched to, for instance, when we first started, we were Lloydminster only. Now we're stretched out to, we have offices in Calgary, Denzel. Our business model has exploded. We've got to meet some good people. We have some great people on staff. And even now, like in the tough times, we still manage to have a little fun. We've always had fun. If you're in business and you're not having fun, you don't want to be in business. I don't care if it's good, bad, or otherwise. If you can't stand going to work, then you got to find something different to do. We've tried to, Tracy and I both, to create and keep an atmosphere in our office to where it's very family orientated and family based, even to the people that aren't family. We like to make them feel that they are. And I think that's what creates the team that we have, because basically Tracy and I and our family are only the name of the business. The business itself is built by the people that work for us.
True. But people follow good leadership.
It's been fun. The goods outweighed the bad.
One of the things I was excited to talk to you about, and I don't know how much you want to share about it. Maybe you'll open right up about it. I have no idea, because I actually have no idea how much you guys do. But I've said this a bunch of times on the podcast when mentioning Crudemaster, specifically you and Heath, you and Tracy, is how much you guys give back to the community. Like, that has been, I don't know, pretty evident to me, but I grew up in Hillmont. I played for the senior hockey team. So I got to see that pretty evidently. Started a podcast. Sweet talk to you and Heath, or you and Tracy, and being the Crudemaster Final Five. But to me, when I get talking to you and Tracy about it, it just seems like, that's been us since the start. That's been the plan from the start.
Well, I believe you have in business, you have your family, your friends, your community, and your business. And you have to, pretty much in that order, look after them all. Without the community, your business will starve. We believe. We believe that looking after the people in our community that look after us is just the right thing to do. Probably the first real sponsorship we ever done other than 4-H. We've been always active sponsors in 4-H. Was the Hillmont Hitmen when they decided to put that team together back. What year was that?
I believe 2008, maybe 2009.
So Brad Simons came to me. I'm going to mention Brad's name because he won't mind. Came up to me in my office and said, look, they wanted to build a dressing room in the arena. Okay. What kind of a dressing room? Well, they want to start a senior team. Well, what do you need? Well, we're wanting to know if you'd had a couple $100 for lumber. And I said, well, so you're not gonna buy much lumber for $200. So I said, why don't you let Crudemaster sponsor the build of the dressing room? I said, we'll take that as advertising in the arena. So that was kind of our first real major sponsorship. And that evolved into sponsoring the uniforms partially the first year, and then I believe we've been the only sponsor in the uniforms since. So that's one of our major ones. Morgan Mann approached us one year when they had the bull riding in Hillmont. Wanted us to co-sponsor with with Wade Redden and his family, and thought that's a great idea to raise money for the rink. It's perfect. So I said, yes, count us in. That's our community, that's our home, that's where we work. We do a lot of work in that area. So that was a 3-year deal. And it was great exposure for us, and it gives back to the community. We've done some work with the Health Foundation, and it's I guess we do it because we like it. It's nice to be able to give back.
Yeah, it's just, I like to shine some light on it because to me, being a part of that community, it's been very evident. And you go quietly about it, Heath. You and Tracy. It's just very quiet, right? It's not about making some noise. It's about doing things when they need to be done, I guess. And it's just, I admire that. I really do. I think that's a very, very cool trait to have.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I guess where I grew up in Fort St. John, there was some of my mentors up there were the same. So I looked at them as, that's pretty cool. They'd go and do something with very little recognition, and so man, that's something else. And you want to do it not because you want your name read out. You want to do it just because it's the right thing to do. And it works good for the community. Because the community, you can raise your problems, or you can teach them the right way to do things. And I believe Hillmont, as a community, teaches our kids and our next generation that's coming up to do the right thing.
That's really well put. I was going to ask about mentors, and if you had any growing up that either stick out and taught you things, and obviously one of them is what we just chatted about. Is there anything else that a mentor taught you growing up?
I had a hockey coach when we were playing minor hockey in Fort St. John. He coached us right from the time we were in, first, second year. Adams, right up until I left Fort St. John as a bantam. His name was Doug Wiles, great guy. Kids loved him, parents hated him. He was that type of coach. He'd drag all the parents into a room at the start of the year when he'd cut the team, and he'd say, you know, if I hear one word out of any of you, I'm going to cut your kid. So if you want to talk, you take your son and his hockey bag and you leave. And I said, I'll replace you. I don't want your input. I don't want nothing. Parents absolutely hated him. As players for him, he'd have us out to his place at Charlie Lake, there skidooing on the weekends, and we'd spend the nights there. He's probably one of the greatest men I ever knew. My dad, another great mentor, and totally admire him and the challenges that he went through in his life. And I have an uncle up in Fort St. John, great hockey player. Had quite a career, finished it off in Fort St. John with the Flyers there, and definitely another one. Great mentor. Guy that says exactly what he's going to do and does it. Had one here, later in life mentor that I had. Frank Mann, probably one of the greatest men I ever met. If I had to look at a mentor from the time I met him until he died, that would have been probably the greatest man I ever knew. Hands down.
I say this all the time. He's number 2 on my, well, not regrets, because, how would I have known? But 2 people I would have loved to have had on this to be recorded. My grandmother.
Oh, yeah.
Followed closely by Frank Mann. Those 2 would have been fantastic.
Story about your grandma. She was always, she came to every one of our family reunions in North Bend. And I believe it was about the 3rd reunion we had there. We had them every 5 years. And we'd mowed a patch of grass and set up horseshoe pits. So we drove these big stakes in the ground for the horseshoes, and Dora come roaring in. She was waving at one of my aunts and not paying attention. We were waving at Dora, telling her to stop, and she ran right over those horseshoe pegs. You could just clunk, clunk. I thought she tore a hole in her oil pan, and she bawled us out for not marking the horseshoe pits off properly. And never forget that.
She was quite the lady.
Yeah, one of a kind.
As was Francis.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, he got, on my wedding night. On my wedding night, Kobe was my best man, and he told the story of us getting drunk and Frank coming out. It was on a school night, and I must have been like grade 11, grade 10. Probably grade 11. Fixing Kobe's car. And we thought we were all being sneaky with having a beer and him not knowing. And he came out and was talking to us. And finally, when there was this awkward pause, is he going to give me one of those beers or what? It was so smooth there. Just like, that was Francis. Francis was a great man.
Yeah, he's one of the most classic one-liner fellas I ever met in my life. I asked him one of our friends was snorting around at a rodeo once, and I said, Frank, what the hell's he up to? And he said, well, he's looking for a wife and he don't care whose. That was one of the best lines I ever heard. Yeah.
I was told this story, and I had no idea. Well, I wait to hear the story, I guess. You've had a daughter kidnapped. That's true.
Yeah, that is very true. Yeah, that was a terrible day, and it was horrible on my wife. I was hauling prefab houses at that time down to Salmon Arm, Kelowna, 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 area, and So I was unloading this house in just outside of Salmon Arm. And one of the boss's sons, he was a salesman there, and your typical boss's son, a pain in the ass. He come over and said I had to go with him to go phone home. And I said, well I'm going to finish unloading here, and then I'll stop in and I'll phone. He said, no, you have to come now. And I didn't like him, so I told him where he could go, and I'd be there once I finished. And he was very insistent that I had to, so I got pissed off and drove in there. And here was got a phone call that Spencer, our youngest daughter, had been taken out. We lived in an apartment in Grand Prairie at that time. So this young gal that, the way the story goes, that lived upstairs from us had decided that she was going to be a mother, so Tracy and I both worked. We actually worked for the same company, actually. She was a secretary for the company I was driving for. And so we had a babysitter. We lived on the ground floor of the apartment building, and the sitter laid the babies down, which everybody has a nap time, and then she, had a nap herself, which everybody's going to. There was steam cleaning carpets in the apartment at that time, and so that's how this girl got into our area, walked in, grabbed the baby, and left. And that poor thing that was babysitting for us woke up and the baby's gone, so phoned Tracy at work and asked her if she had the baby. Well, of course, no, she doesn't. So hence the hunt was on. But I handed it to the RCMP. They had it figured out who had her, where she was, within hours. So that's when I phoned. And of course, I decked my trailers off then, and I was bobtailing home to get home. So consequently, by the time I got home, they'd found her. But no cell phones or anything, so you don't know until you actually get there, right? And they were grilling Tracy on, like, where's your husband? Well, no, it wasn't him. Last time I talked to him, he was in Dead Man's Flats, which the cop says, well, where the hell is that? Just a little town just outside of Banff. But yeah, it was a terrifying experience for her. They found the baby that day. A little girl and her dad. Her dad worked for the radio station in Grand Prairie. I can't for the life of me remember his name, but anyway, they were walking through the park, through Bear Creek Park, and she seen a little chunk of pink blanket there, and so she walked up the hill. This is about 8 hours after the baby had been gone, and pulled it, and Spencer rolled down the hill. So can you imagine what went through that guy's mind, right?
So did I hear that correct? The baby
So
gets
what
kidnapped, and then she hid it?
She knew the police were on to her, and she got scared, so she took the baby, took Spencer, and buried her in a bunch of willow bushes on the spillbanks of Bear Creek in Grand Prairie. And just by luck and by chance, that little girl and her dad happened to be walking by, yeah. So Spencer, if you've met my daughter, like if something's going to happen, it's going to be her. So yeah, she's got quite a biography behind her already, starting from very, very young. So
I don't know what I'd do with that, Heath.
yeah, it was hard on Tracy. It's hard on everybody, right?
It
takes a while.
A parent's worst nightmare is anything happening to their kids, right? I mean, like.
Well, yeah.
And that is pretty. Man, that is. Fuck. That is. I don't even know the word for that. And then top it off, the cops didn't find her. The cops. She knew she and hit her, and that's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
That's a fucking story.
Yeah, they were on to her, but, like they pretty much locked that whole city down. You weren't getting in or out. So my hats are off to them. Boy, they done a great job. They'd have found her. It just would have taken a little more time than the luck of that little girl pulling on that pink blanket. Spencer, she'd tell that story, and people wouldn't believe her, and she'd come home and be mad and be crying. And she had a school teacher in Grand Prairie she told that story to, and the teacher called her a liar. And Tracy went up one side of her and down the other. That was a very bad day in her world. Yeah.
Well, it was Spencer who texted it to me, and I went,
Oh,
no frickin' way. Spencer's going to hear this and be laughing. And I'm like, what? I texted her back. I'm like, daughter kidnapped? Really? Like, I mean, that just doesn't happen. Or I shouldn't say it happens very often.
yeah, it's not something you hear of, right? And then that's, thank God, you don't hear of it a lot. Our story turned out a whole lot better than some.
Well, my last one for you before we get to the Crudemaster Final Five, which I've been looking forward to for a while, is Tracy. You've talked an awful lot about her. Obviously, she is, knowing you, a very big piece of your life. I always forget to do this with a lot of people, but I'm not going to forget with you, especially knowing Tracy. When did you first meet her?
Well, I moved to Grand Prairie from Fort St. John when I was 13. So yeah, and then went to school, grade 9 in Grand Prairie. I met Tracy in grade 10. She was dating a guy I used to play hockey against when I played for Fort St. John. Kind of a big lunkhead, but at any rate, we started dating in grade 10 in Grand Prairie. And we married when we were 19. Dad, at our wedding, he said it was the perfect case of opposites attracting each other. He said, she's pregnant, he's not. I still laugh about that. So yeah, we were parents at 19, and we always teased Megan, that our oldest daughter, that she was born 6 months premature, but at full weight. Yeah, no, Trace is a trooper. She's been, as far as Crudemaster is concerned, with her accounting background, has made it so much easier to do business. And she's taught Spencer, now our youngest daughter. Spencer's more or less taken over from Tracy, so Tracy and I can kind of get out and do the traveling that we want, and I know that everything's getting handled. So. But the old saying, if Mama's not happy, run. So.
What was it about Trace the first time you saw her?
No, he's pretty fiery. Yeah. We all smoked at that time, so this dipshit that she was dating, he wrestled her for a cigarette, and I said to him, I said, that was wrong, what you done. Well, he said, I don't care. I said, all right, well, fine. So I think I asked her out on a date about a couple of weeks later. Yeah, she's quite a gal.
Always look for, by no means is this an archive episode, but with my archive episodes with people who've been married or together for a long period of time, for advice on marriage / being with a significant other for as long as you've been. Is there something you can pass along to anyone listening?
Well, you can be right or you can be happy. You decide. Bruce Sutherland said once, and I laughed at this one. He said, it's been a long road and most of it hasn't been paved. No. Once a thing, you're not going to get along every day and you're not going to do everything right, but at the end of the day, you have to weigh in what's going on. And as far as Tracy and I are concerned, our goals are the same at the end of the day. So We both want the same things. So it makes it that much easier. Getting to where we are today wasn't, it wasn't all paved.
Never is.
But we're here now, so.
I think if you set yourself up for thinking it's all paved, that's probably a big reason the problem.
I believe that's the trouble with the world today right now is not most people don't have any try. When you worst thing about it is when you have divorce lawyers advertising on billboards. I think that's where shit goes south. So,
well, you understand. They realize there is money to be had in divorce.
mm-hmm.
And that's a scary thought, in my opinion.
Tracy says once that we probably would have, but we couldn't afford the $200 retainer. So, lucky for me.
Well, let's do the Crudemaster Final Five. I'm sitting across from the guy who makes it happen, so I don't know if I need any more intro than that.
There you go.
The first one is always, especially on the first time in here. If you could sit across from somebody and do what I'm doing to you, who would you take?
If I could sit across from somebody, I would have taken Frank Mann, but that's impossible. Sadly, if I had to do it, the ones that I would want to sit across from aren't here anymore.
Is there a runner-up?
Is there a runner-up?
Yeah. I would love to sit across from Frank. I know you. That would have been a fun. Can you imagine? Toss a couple mics and just me sit here and throw curveballs and softballs and slow pitches and any other pitch you can imagine. The old spitball and see what you two would do to it. That would have been fantastic. But without Francis around, is there a runner-up?
Yeah, I would say the runner-up would probably be another old friend of mine, Dean Swanberg. Be a great guy. Oil patch fella, empire in the business. That would be one that I would like to talk to. And we do all the time. His stories are great. His laugh is contagious. Most of what we would talk about probably wouldn't be G-rated. Yeah.
How about if you could take somebody out for... Well, if you could go partying with one person for one night. You're going to paint the town red. You can have anyone. Who do you want beside you?
Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott?
Absolutely. He'd be hilarious. Yeah.
He's got a better voice than you, Heath.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's cool. Yeah. You just want to catch what fell off of him.
Your favorite Frank story?
Oh, there's lots of them. I'll tell you this one. So, in 2000, Frank and Candy and Tracy and I went on a Caribbean cruise. It was an inaugural cruise, a Princess cruise, into the Caribbean, a 7-day. And we stopped, our first stop was Trinidad. And I believe this next stop was in Barbados. Anyway, we jumped in a cab and we were touring the island because we were off the ship for the whole day. We didn't sign up for any tours. We'd just hire a cab and get them to take us around. And we got to the top of the mountain and there was a real skinny black fella playing a ukulele and a weird straw hat on, and he noticed Frank's hat. Frank wore his cowboy hat everywhere. And so we walked up and we're listening to him, and he had his guitar box out there for donations. He was singing that song, All Day, All Night, Mary Ann. And Frank looked at him and says, "Well, who do you think I am, Superman?" And that guy just totally stopped playing his guitar. Couldn't figure the line out. Oh, my God. I was on my hands and knees climbing back into that cab. I was laughing so hard just to look in that guy's face, but he totally shut him down. Frank laughed about that the whole way back down the mountain. And if you ever heard Frank laugh, that would have been one of my favorites of him. Like I say, he had some good ones. We were coaching the boys in a hockey tournament while I was coaching. I can't remember who was with me that time. I think Rick Wack and Frank was the tournament organizer. And we had a local referee that volunteered his time numerous times. And we weren't playing, but there was two of the opposition playing, and the tournament first lead off on the Saturday morning. And the lady from the one team come up to Frank and I. We were having a coffee in the lobby of the old Hillmont Arena. And she asked who the manager was, and Frank says, "Well, that'd be me." She said, "I have a problem." And Frank says, "Oh, what might that be, ma'am?" And she said, "I think your referee has been drinking." He said, "You better hope so." Her eyes got as big as these Scotch glasses, and she stomped away. Well, yeah. That was... And she didn't know how true that was. Because if he wasn't, that game would have went to hell in a handbasket. That was the old days, too. We shouldn't be repeating that. But.
If you were on a cross-country tour, had to co-pilot a semi, you had a long haul, you're driving 12-hour shifts and switching off and sleeping in the bunk, and you get to pick your co-pilot, who are you taking?
Kirk Thompson. Yeah, we've traveled together since I moved here in 97. Probably my best friend.
You know, if Kurt is listening to this, which he probably will, the Thompson boys would be a great...
Oh, yeah. It wouldn't be G-rated either, though. I'll give you that.
Since when do we need to be fucking G-rated, Heath? Hey?
No, that's right.
That'd be something you could turn on your car stereo anywhere in the world and be like...
Yeah. Yeah, no, that'd be a good one. Yeah. Those boys, they know a lot of history. Yeah. We've had some laughs.
Final one. What's left on the bucket list? You got a lot of life left to live, but I'm curious, what's left on the bucket list?
Well, hopefully this dipshit that we got running our country smartens up, and we can get some of the bucket list chipped away. I would like to, Tracy and I always talked, we want to see other parts of Europe. We'd love to go to Iceland. Like to see that. See the world. Yeah, that's want to get some traveling in, and well, the guy's still healthy enough to travel. So many times when we in some of the trips we were on, some of the cruises and what have you, we find that people, be it their own accord, but they wait too long to travel. They wait too long until they can't maneuver as well as they should be able to, and that I think that robs them from seeing what they should be seeing. Lots of cases, it's not of their own accord, but if you can afford to do it, I hope we still can, and I'd like to see the rest of this world before I go. I have no desire to go to China, but I'd like to see other parts.
Well, I appreciate you coming in and doing this.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you having me. It was a lot of fun.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show, please click subscribe. Then scroll to the bottom and rate and leave a review. I promise it helps. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we will have a new guest sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast fix. Until next time. Hey, all you keeners who are waiting again, 2 for 2. Man, and as soon as I started this, I'm going to show all my screw-ups. I must be getting better, or I'm letting a few things slide. Either probably works. A shout out to Dawson Jenkins, who was listening to Mr. Clint Malarchuk on his moving day. Post that on social media. Shout out to you, Big Shooter. Thanks for listening. And if you enjoy listening to the podcast, make sure you post, you let me know, and we'll try and get you mentioned on here, all right? Now, champ, get your feet up off the desk already. Go back to work. Till next time, you filthy animals. All right, I'm out.